Hi, folks. Welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Well, as is expected, things are continually escalating in the Middle East. And when I say Middle East, I don't just mean Israel, I mean the Middle East. China, if you haven't heard, has deployed a fleet of 6 warships into the area because they have to secure their own interest in the area, which is going to create a more precarious situation because we have about the largest naval fleet gathered in one place in a very, very long time, with 2 of our carrier groups and several other ships there in the Mediterranean and then around the Middle East, not just the Mediterranean. So, our airplanes over around Taiwan have been kind of flying pretty close to each other and I guess giving each other the sign to stay away. But now we've got ships that are going to be in somewhat close proximity of each other in the Middle East. Also, the Pentagon has announced that they are activating thousands more. I haven't seen a definite number yet, but thousands more of our servicemen and women to be set on ready to deploy status. So we already said that with 2,000 people last week, and now it's going to be thousands more. Also, the Pentagon has given the orders that all Middle Eastern defense systems to go on active defense, high alert, activate them. So things in that arena are getting, they're getting bigger and more intense. The fighting seems to have shifted towards the north in Israel, between Israel and Hezbollah. A lot of very intense fighting there. There's been more attacks on U.S. bases in Syria and Iraq with drones and mortar shells and things of that nature. So things are just starting to kind of heat up there. Um, I think a lot of people still are oblivious to the fact of how bad this could become, not just for us in the Middle East or anyone in the Middle East, but the possibility that things could definitely expand rapidly outside of the Middle East and into other fronts. Remember that Janet Yellen just this past week said that the United States we can afford a 2-front war. Not a big deal. I mean, we're going into debt by trillions of dollars. Just this year, just in the last 4 months, we've gone into debt, $2.2 trillion, just in the last 4 months. The IMF says that that's unsustainable, but it doesn't matter because we just keep writing the checks, crank up those printing machines and just put us into more debt, which my personal opinion, this is being done to just drain every drop that they can, squeeze every drop they can out of us until they crash the system and bring about a new currency. And China is playing a big part of that. They keep dumping U.S. treasuries by the tens of billions of dollars. They're the biggest owner of U.S. currency, U.S. debt, and they're dumping it on massive scales. It was something like 40 billion, I think, just in the last month or two that they have dumped. So that is going to continue to hurt our currency, as well as this whole conflict is putting a greater divide between the West and the rest of the world, and the rest of the world's going to stop using our currency, as they have already been doing, and that's going to devalue our currency even more. So not only are we going into very potentially a very broad scale world war, my tongue, good gracious, I need some more coffee this morning. I've only had 1 cup. That's just not enough to get going. We've got the Middle East, several places in Europe, of course, South Asia, all kinds of stuff going on. And then, of course, we've got, hundreds of thousands poured into our border every month. Last month, almost 270,000 people were recorded coming into the United States at the southern border, and that's not all the other ways that they come into the country. So we're watching Western society fail. I've said that for years now. I've said that we are watching it collapse. I think that because we live in such an instant society, we expect things to just happen overnight, like some kind of Hollywood movie. I've said this more times than I could count. We watch a Hollywood movie, some kind of end times or apocalyptic type of movie, and one day it's all nice and wonderful. The next day, the characters in the movie wake up And it's death and destruction everywhere, and it all ends within 24 hours, and you've watched it for an hour and a half. That's not how it works. It takes time. It takes time, and we are watching it over the last few years of this Western modern society completely collapse. And I believe it's going to be a greater collapse than history has ever seen. We're bigger than anything history has ever seen. And I think we think that we're so big we can't fail. Americans think that America's so big it can't fail, that it can't collapse, that it can't be invaded. And that is a very dangerous place for people to be, especially nowadays, considering everything that's happening. I mean, we're watching all these indicators, whether it be war or famine or disease or financial collapse. All of these things are lining up in a very orderly fashion to indicate that a massive collapse of our society is ensue. And unfortunately, most Americans are completely oblivious to it because they're still getting their Starbucks, they're still getting their nails done, they're still watching their football, they're still planning little vacations and the new Tesla they're going to buy and all this kind of stuff. And they're completely oblivious to the fact that we're watching our society crumble. You just go out in the city streets anywhere, any decent sized city in the United States, and you'll see that we're crumbling. The amount of poverty and homelessness and drugs and just crime and degenerate behavior that is so widespread in America. It's in nearly every city. And people just kind of glaze over, well, that's just kind of the new normal. That's the modern way things are nowadays, right? It's not. Those are all indicators of a collapsing society. And we have to get ready for it. We have to take all of these things quite seriously. Something I mentioned last night in the live stream, if you missed the live stream last night, it is now only on Rumble. Talked about a few things that YouTube doesn't like us to talk about. So afterwards, I personally deleted the live stream off of YouTube. And so now you can go watch it on my Rumble channel. But one of the things I talked about was that another YouTube channel, I believe it was yesterday, kind of brought this out into the public eye. God, Family, and Guns, I think, is the YouTube channel. And the largest manufacturer of ammunition in the United States has just recently been sold in the last few days. It's called Vista Outdoors. You've probably never heard of it because that's the parent company that makes numerous popular brands, Federal, CCI, several other brands of ammunition that you're all familiar with, along with a lot of gun manufacturing, popular brands of gun equipment, tactical equipment, outdoor equipment. Anyways, this is the biggest in the country. Also makes a big, portion of primers and powder and bullets and all that kind of stuff for those of you that make your own bullets. They all of that equipment this company makes, and they're the biggest. Well, this past week they sold to a Czech Republic investment group. Now, what does that mean? We don't know yet. Maybe things will just keep manufacturing at the same rate and nothing will ever change. But apparently this person or group that purchased Vista Outdoors, they don't seem to have a lot of money backing. Like, they basically had just enough money to purchase it, and it kind of makes you wonder, that level of purchase, do they have enough cash flow to keep things going? So my greater point is we've already seen things like ammunition shortages. We're starting to see prices increase of body armor and other types of defense equipment that you may need to be purchasing. And then now this company gets bought out by some foreign entity, and it's still unsure if it's going to stand, be able to keep functioning, if it's going to be moved out of the United States. How it's going to happen, we don't know. And so my point is that you should probably continue to get ready in that area. Still, every day I get emails and text messages from people talking about how they're having a real hard time buying ammo. And I am sympathetic to that to a point, but also I have to remind myself that for months and months and months now, years, I have been telling people very frequently that you need to be stocking up on this kind of stuff. Uh, it wasn't very long ago, a few weeks ago, you could get ammunition quite cheap. I said it then. When this whole thing started with Israel, one of the very first things I said is you need to get online, you need to order some ammo right now. Because at that moment, it was still cheap and available. And only a few days later, it just flew off the shelves. That's just one thing. When things start happening at a greater rate here in the United States, when we start seeing more problems and more violent attacks like they're seeing already in Europe. I mean, just this weekend, a Jewish rabbi was killed, was stabbed to death. And it appears that it was probably done in retaliation of what's going on in the Middle East. When those types of events happen, where there's more violent attacks by sleeper cells and just the fact that hundreds of thousands of illegals, military-aged males illegals, are pouring into this country, when those things start to happen at a more noticeable pace, people are going to panic in other areas too. They're going to panic in just like they did back during the pandemic, and it's probably going to be way more than just toilet paper. They're going to panic when it comes to food and gasoline and household items, because most Americans from time to time hear stuff like what I'm saying. They hear a few things here and there from preppers, and they probably have someone in their life, a family member, a coworker, a friend, that's probably told them over the last few years, you see all this stuff going on, you should probably stock up. And they have ignored it because life has seemed normal. But the moment that life stops seeming normal anymore, all of those people that's heard this is going to remember the things that we've said, and they're going to rush out and they're going to stock up on things because they haven't so far. They've thought that, well, I've got enough time. Things are still pretty okay. I can still buy things. So, I'll wait till next week or next month or next year. And then when they realize that they don't have that time left, they're going to rush out and they're going to charge up their cards and they're going to drain their savings and they're going to buy a bunch of stuff. And when lots of people do it, and it doesn't have to be a majority, 5%, 10%, 15% of the population runs out and does that, yeah, it's gonna be crazy. If you go back to the pandemic when it all started and everyone was buying up all the toilet paper and the gallons of milk and all that kind of stuff, if you look at the numbers, most experts and stuff estimate that it was only about 15%, 10 to 15% of the population of America was running out and doing all the bulk buying. But only 10 to 15%, and we saw things dry up pretty quickly. You add that on top of a world war, especially with China, and then you're going to see supply chain issues, major supply chain issues, because a vast majority of our stuff or raw materials for stuff come from China. We have allowed ourselves to be subservient to them. There's not this thing that we rule over them. They rule over us. And you can argue that all you want, but when they control 85% of all the precious metals and rare earth minerals and 85% of all the medications and 70 to 80% of all the manufacturing in China and here in the United States, then it's pretty plain and clear that they really do own us. When all that kind of starts coming home to roost, people are going to panic. And this ammunition shortage we've seen happen over the last couple of weeks is going to pale in comparison. And so I encourage you to take it quite seriously and do the things you need to do to make sure you have enough. Because at some point, it's all going to happen, and then you're all going to be getting on here complaining about how you don't have anything and you can't find it because it's all sold out. Yep. Should have been buying cases of ammo every few months. Should have been buying it, set aside a certain amount of boxes of ammunition that you should have been buying every month. For the last 2 years, because ammunition has been decently priced for a couple of years now, year and a half. If you'd been putting away $100 a month, $50 a month, $25 a month, you'd have pretty much what you need right now, and you wouldn't be worrying about the shortages. But you didn't, some of you. A lot of you did. A lot of you have plenty. But some of you didn't. And now you're understanding why you should have. This isn't scolding you. I'm not slapping you on the hand or anything like that. This is just speaking reality and trying to get you to understand why I say the things I do and why you need to be getting ready for it, because it's happening. But we're in a probably a worse time right now than we've ever seen in American history, and still so many people are just asleep at the wheel. Don't be one of those people. Get your houses in order, prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.